Over time, we have seen the effectiveness of Ukrainian countermeasures going up, and the interesting part, I think, and this is a point that I try to make in the article, is that this improvement is the result not of very sophisticated technologies, but actually is the result of first, the amount of short-range air defenses that Ukraine can now, deploy across the country. Second, the experience and training of its personnel, which is always a very important aspect. And third, it's also the ingenuity of Ukrainians that have been able to find very interesting ways and cost-effective ways to counter this type of weapons. My name is Federico Borsari. I'm a resident fellow with the Center for European Policy Analysis in Washington, D.C. I'm part of the Transatlantic Defense and Security Team at SIPA, and I typically cover military and defense issues. And of course, since 2022, when I started with this think tank, the Russian invasion of Ukraine also was commencing, and since then I've been covering the conflict almost on a daily basis. These systems are called Geran or geranium in Russian. They are basically the licensed copies of Iranian-made Shahed 131 and 136 one-way attack drones. And Russia is now producing these systems domestically with the license from Iran, and it started doing so last year. And these systems are basically very rudimentary, actually, in design, drones that are launched from typically trucks or pneumatic catapults, and they are basically one-way attack drones. So they are meant to be used against stationary targets mostly, and they are, as I said, very rudimentary in design. They have a propeller piston engine. They are built with honeycomb fiberglass material. They have satellite-based and inertial-based guidance systems, but they don't have typically other types of sensor on board. So they basically use geographic coordinates to strike, their target. So they fly typically at 150 kilometers, and they don't reach very high altitudes during their flight. So they are not particularly sophisticated in terms of technology, but they certainly are a very cost-effective weapon that Russia is now using against Ukraine on a daily basis to strike and destroy, as I mentioned, stationary targets like critical infrastructure or buildings and similar targets. These systems are meant to complement Russia fire's capabilities. Typically, we have seen that they are integrated into strike packages that also comprise long-range missiles. So the purpose of these systems is basically to provide Russia with a very cost-effective weapon that can be combined with more sophisticated systems like cruise missiles or ballistic missiles, and to make it very difficult for Ukrainian air defenses to intercept the most important missiles, because of the presence of many other targets into the strike packages. So basically, they are used to sometimes identify gaps in Ukrainian air defenses. They are used as decoys, so in this respect, or other times are used to saturate basically Ukrainian air defenses, and to make it more difficult for Kiev to kind of defend itself from these large scale attacks. The introduction of this weapon by Russia last year was seen by many observers and analysts as a potential kind of turning point into the war because of the enormous quantities of these drones being used by Russia, and the lack of sufficient air defenses for on the part of Ukraine. But at the same time, we have seen that while at the beginning of 2023 and onward, when these weapons were used uh, more and more by Russia, Ukrainian air defenses were not yet able to kind of counter this type of weapon. With time passing, Ukrainian air defenses have improved, and especially short-range air defenses have been, bolstered by the provision of different type of systems by Western allies, and in this way, Ukrainian operators and air defense operators have been able not only to intercept a greater number of this kind of weapon of Garan one-way attack drones, but they have also been able to own and to improve their skills in terms of tactics and techniques and procedures to kind of counter this type of threat. And so over time we have seen the effectiveness of Ukrainian countermeasures going up. And the interesting part, I think, and this is a point that I try to make in the article, is that this improvement is the result not of very sophisticated technologies, but actually is the result of first the amount of short-range air defenses that Ukraine can now, deploy across the country. Second, the experience and training of its personnel, which is always a very important aspect. And third, it's also the ingenuity of Ukrainians that have been able to find very interesting ways and cost-effective ways to counter this type of weapons. So Ukrainians forces, for instance, have been using sensors of different types, from acoustic sensors to electro-optical sensors, and other types of technologies to detect these drones. And once they detect it, they have also found, sorry, very cost-effective ways to shut them down using very traditional artillery, air artillery, to basically shut them down, or using man-pads or man-portable air defense systems that are much more cost-effective than traditional air defense interceptors. But they have also been using, helicopters, sorties, with machine guns, and there are many recent instances of that prove, Ukrainian ingenuity, and other ways also to kind of counter these weapons in a very cost-effective way. So basically, they are kind of balancing the effect that Russia hoped to obtain with this kind of weapon. This point, as I also described in the article, it is true that Ukrainians have improved their capabilities to counter this weapon, and the amount of systems that are destroyed is going up. In recent months, we have seen an uptick in Ukrainian effectiveness, and now we are talking about a percentage of between 85 and 90% of Shahed drones that are launched that are intercepted by Ukrainians. But still, the problem is in these 10% or even 5% that can go through Ukrainian air defenses and strike infrastructure. because of these systems, because these systems are quite dangerous. They have a significant, they have a, let's say, a fairly significant warhead. They can produce uh, important damages to infrastructure. And so that's why what Ukraine needs now is the ability to kind of destroy the launchers of these systems, or the ground infrastructure that is necessary to use these systems. I'm talking about command and control centers. I'm talking about ground control stations. I'm talking about the logistics that is necessary for these systems to be launched by Russia. Typically, these are launched from either Crimea or from areas neighboring Ukraine, Russian territory neighboring Ukraine. And in recent months, we have seen a differentiation in terms of, flying paths of these systems. So what Ukraine needs now is the ability to basically conduct left of launch missions, left of launch operations that can, basically destroy at the origin these systems. And for doing that, it's necessary to have long range strike capabilities, and that's why, this is part of the equation as well. So it's important, of course, to have a good infrastructure for in terms of air defense. But at the same time, if you don't have the means to kind of destroy the launchers, then you will continuously face the same problem over and over again. And so that's very important, I think, for Ukraine. Well, certainly there is an issue with the quality of troops on the part of Russia. If for Ukraine the problem is to find new personnel, is to kind of train new personnel in a meaningful period of time to, see the effects on the battlefield, and also to have sufficient equipment. On the part of Russia, the low quality of troops is often a problem that, force the Kremlin to uh, literally use quantity as a surrogate of, of quality in this respect. Basically, to compensate for the lack of quality, the Kremlin has to, pour human resources much more than at a much higher level than what Ukraine needs. And so I think the lack of quality has often hindered Russian operations, and especially offensive operations. Now we are seeing a steady, progress, actually, in recent weeks, a very quick progress in certain areas of Donbass by Russia. But that's because also Ukrainian forces there don't have sufficient manpower to man all the defenses. They don't have sufficient ammunition and also equipment to basically conduct effective defensive operations. They don't have rotation often, and so plus, certain command and control issues. These has basically helped the Russians to advance. But at the same time, the quality of Russian troops is averagely quite low. So this is certain a factor on the Russian side, and at the same time, another factor is the progressively diminishing availability of equipment in certain capability segments. I'm talking about, APCs. I'm talking about tanks. So Russia is trying to produce them as much as quickly as possible as it can, but we have seen that, it's also drawing on its Soviet stocks, and most of them are now almost exhausted. They still have a lot of quantity, but the quality of vehicles, for instance, is decreasing rapidly. They are using old vehicles in several areas of the front line, and new production is insufficient to keep up. keep up with the pace of basically losses on the battlefield. So in the long term, Russia will have to make choices on how it uses its equipment and its personnel, because with this rate of losses, it will be impossible for Russia to continue this type of offensive operations across the front line. And that's why in recent months we have seen a concentration of efforts in the Pokrovsk and Donetsk area. When it comes to one-way attack drones, certainly they are an important, let's say, capability or weapon that Russia has been using in Ukraine. But at the same time, there are also um, a lot of possible countermeasures that you can use, and these are very effective and absolutely not kind of too sophisticated or too kind of costly for also Western countries. So Ukrainians and Ukraine in general provide us with a very good example on how NATO countries can improve their air defense and basically um, uh, be able to counter this type of drones without you know um, spending too much resources or finding complicated or complex way of dealing with this threat, because actually it's very simple. You just need to have the political will to invest in certain areas of defense, amidst many other priorities. And this is something I mentioned in the article, and I think should receive more attention from policymakers, because it's actually a very simple solution to a threat that is certainly serious, but nothing that cannot be resolved with Western technology.